Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, my apologies very sincerely for starting a bit late. One of our speakers has got stuck in rain and he'll arrive any moment. But we will go ahead and let me, on behalf of the Guruswamy Center, invite today a panel of speakers, starting from our chief guest, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, onto the dais. And Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, as all of you know, is the Special Chief Secretary holding very important portfolios of industries, IT and commerce. Next, I request Mr. B.P. Acharya to please come on to the dais. Acharya again is retired Special Chief Secretary, but very active, and he was also the director of MCR HRD Institute. Good evening. I request the author and VIP of this evening, Mr. Dinesh C Sharma, to come on to the dais. I request Mohan Guruswamy, who is also a well-known face here, to come on to the dais. And our other panelist, Sajjad, will join us as and when he comes. Now, for me, it's a great privilege to, introduce today Dinesh Sharma for many reasons. One of those is that he is my classmate from Nizam College. He was also my classmate in journalism at Osmania. He was my colleague in Press Trust of India. And we have been, I think our friendship goes back to 50 years. So personally, it's a pride moment for me that he has written a book which touches our heart and very dear to all of us. I welcome to him today. The book, anyway, he will tell more, but it's a very well researched, scholarly kind of work which gives a beautiful story of the background of the Nizams' time to the most latest advances in technology. It was thanks to Mohan's quick call that we assembled today for this program. But as soon as he saw the book, he called me and said, this looks very interesting, why don't you call him? Then I said, Dinesh is my classmate, I made a call, he said he is coming to Hyderabad. Everything fell into place. And today we are also fortunate to have a very distinguished panel. Yeah, I welcome Sajjad to the dais, please. Yeah, welcome Sajjad. And I will very briefly introduce the panel, although I think they are very, very familiar. Starting with Jayesh Ranjan. Jayesh Ranjan, as all of you know, is in the thick of action. For the last 15 years, I think what all happened in Hyderabad, he has hands-on, he's been involved in IT to industry. So we are very fortunate that he will be releasing the book and also, talking about the book about the Hyderabad story. Acharya, again, before Jayesh Ranjan was very, very active in the development of Hyderabad as APIAC MD, in the setting of Biotech Park, in progress of Knowledge Park, and also the BioAsia and many, many industries. Acharya is quite glued on. So we thought these two gentlemen from the government, from passionately pushing Hyderabad's image, would be very appropriate to speak on this book. Post-retirement also, Mr. Acharya has been with several institutions. He is also a member of IRDA and speaks a lot on various subjects. Sajjad Shahid is a conservation specialist. He has been associated with the Deccan Studies Conservation Program. He is also involved in the restoration and conservation of Qutub Shahi tombs as a consultant to the Aga Khan Society, and he is very passionate about Hyderabad, the heritage, the history, and the old state of Nizam. So we thought he will be a good contrast to the modernization of Hyderabad this evening. And Mohan Guruswamy will moderate the show this evening. And as all of you know, he doesn't mince any words. He is dispassionately frank on public issues, very deeply knowledgeable about Hyderabad, and he would do a wonderful moderation job today, I am sure. Let's begin the evening with the formal launch of the book by Jayesh Ranjan. Then Jayesh Ranjan will speak. After that, we will have the author, Dinesh Sharma, formally presenting his book. Then we'll have a panel discussion moderated by Mohan Guruswamy, and the audience here will have the last word through your questions and also the clarifications, and in case you have anything more exciting and interesting to say, you're all welcome. Let's have a wonderful evening with the title of the book being Beyond Biryani. Many called me and said, will we have biryani after or before? So I said, the flavor of biryani at least should be there. One guy, in fact, one of my friends said, why don't you ask the Westland books to promote biryani as well in Hyderabad at least. So, we'll have a wonderful evening, I'm sure. Request Jayesh Ranjan to do the honors.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, respected Mr. B.P. Acharya, Mr. Sajjad Shahid, Mr. Som Shekhar, Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, respected Mr. A.K. Goyal, and so many other familiar faces, Mr. Utkarsh, Mr. Ronak Yar Khan, Ms. Divya, and most importantly, Mr. Dinesh Sharma, who is the person behind this wonderful book, Beyond Biryani. And this is also a very apt time to write these kind of books, because I remember about 6 years ago, Times of India had completed 25 years in Hyderabad, and I had also completed 25 years as a civil servant in earlier combined state of Andhra Pradesh, then the state of Telangana, and in Hyderabad for sure. So Times of India somehow figured this out, that I am also completing 25 years, they are completing 25 years. And they were bringing out a commemorative edition. They asked me to write something on these 25 years journey. And what they asked me was that what are the key decisions which were taken in your experience in these 25 years, which have created a huge impact on Hyderabad becoming a globalized, the making of a globalized Hyderabad, as the blurb says here. So when I was thinking about that article, of course it was 6 years ago, so I won't be very precise in my recollection, but I do recall that I started that article by comparing Lucknow. So I'm from Lucknow, I was born there, grew up there, went to school there, and 25 years earlier, I had left Lucknow and come to Hyderabad. And at that time, there wasn't much difference between Lucknow and Hyderabad. Both were kind of capitals of provincial, two provinces, which were kind of laid back. So if you recall, 25 years ago also, or now of course, it is 31 years ago. What was 25 years then? When people had to list out the metropolitan cities of our country, the 4 names which will automatically come: Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, Calcutta and Madras. There won't be any mention of Bangalore. There would be certainly no mention of Hyderabad at all. And that is how it was. These were considered to be sleepy kind of provincial capitals. Nothing much is happening. There is some old world charm. People are still living in that 17th century, 18th century, which is of course not to say that that charm is not necessary to be continued today, but nothing much is happening. These are not, as the phrase goes, these are not happening cities, etc. But then 25 years later, so much has happened that it necessitates books like these. People have researched Hyderabad. I mean, lots of American university scholars have interviewed me, taken data from us to understand what has really changed Hyderabad. And some of the things I'm sure has happened before our eyes. The decision roughly about 2 decades ago to set up an information technology cluster by merging 9 villages. Sir was involved in that to set up what is now called as the Cyberabad area. Then giving an equal importance of that nature to life sciences, particularly biotech. Of course, the life sciences industry is here from late 50s onwards because of IDPL, but particularly to catch on the next big wave of life sciences, which was biotech at that point in time, 2 decades earlier. Then taking this very important decision to shift the airport. I still remember in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, Hyderabad got the chance to host one real big international event. So ADB, as we know, it's a big funding agency, bilateral funding agency in the eastern part of the world. And they host their annual meet of governors. So they had chosen to host it in India, and for some reason, it came to Hyderabad. And at that time, we just had this Begumpet airport. So obviously, people who have used this airport would admit to some advantages here, but to host an international event and receive literally in every flight some half a dozen big dignitaries who require protocol and all, the inadequacy of this airport was very quickly exposed. And then this decision was taken to have a greenfield airport. The policy also was introduced at that point in time. The airport was introduced. Then another momentous decision to set up the outer ring road. And it's a very nice coincidence that we are speaking in the evening, because today morning, a delegation from JICA came to meet me, and one person who was there in the delegation, he kind of remembered that he was a part of the original JICA team, which took a call on providing financial assistance, lending support to the outer ring road. And he was trying to tell me, I mean, he was recollecting that JICA was very much against the technical specs of the project. JICA wanted a smaller road, a narrower road, but I do recall the Chief Minister at that time, late Dr. Y.S. Retd, he was very, very particular. He told, I remember in one of the meetings, him telling us that these kind of infrastructure projects are built keeping hundreds of years of lifespan in mind. It's not meant for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And don't worry whether traffic experts advise that this much of traffic numbers will come or not. Look at the future. We are not going to acquire lands again and again and again. And then he kind of decided to give us, he kind of decided to give us the go-ahead for this 8-lane expressway that we see today. So these are some of the important decisions which were taken successively. One very important thing which has been brought in the book also, while we have released it now formally, but the publishers were grateful to give me an advance copy. So I've read the book already. And this is something which has been aptly brought out, which all of us are familiar with, which is that there has been a continuity of understanding the value that a city like Hyderabad can contribute. This is a location which is strategically very important. As all of us would know, even missiles are manufactured in Hyderabad. And the only reason why that decision was taken was that it is completely situated at a terrain which is seismically very stable. There will be no typhoons, no hurricanes, the weather is good. It's located centrally in the country, so anywhere to anywhere is just a matter of a couple of hours at the most, and so on and so forth. So people have realized this fact, and in terms of the culture which was built by the Qutub Shahis and the Nizams of what is called the syncretic culture. You encourage people from other parts of the world and obviously the other parts of the country to come and live here, give them important positions. So living here is not just symbolic. People from other parts. So my wife is also here. She belongs to a community, and her she's obviously not from Hyderabad. She's from Delhi. She's a Mathur, and some of you would know. Mathurs were given very, very important responsibilities by the 4th Nizam, the 5th Nizam, the 6th, 7th. Of course, Ronak is the 9th Nizam. I don't know whether you have anything to do with Mathurs or not. Yeah, you're sitting next to her. So yeah, you are giving respect to her, as I can see. So, so that is how it is. So the advantage that Hyderabad offers, people have recognized that, they have built upon it. Successive chief ministers have invested in Hyderabad. They have got that sense that I should do some things which are much ahead of the curve, as they say. Unlike, for example, let us say Bangalore. Of course, the intention is not to run down any other city. Bangalore has its own advantages. But the reality is that Bangalore has lost it very, very badly because of the fact that they failed to invest in commute, in good quality infrastructure, in understanding bottlenecks, and some of that advantage comes to us when we talk to investors, etc. Many of them today prefer Hyderabad because of the strong value proposition on infrastructure. So all that has been captured in the book, and as I said, it's very, very apt that it is called Beyond Biryani. I will take 2-3 minutes more to tell something which is not written in the book. I'm sure 10 years later or 15 years later, Mr. Sharma may write a sequel to that book, and whatever I'm speaking now possibly would be contained in that book. But I'll take few minutes to tell you what is going to happen next in Hyderabad. And I'll tell you about 5 big ticket projects which the government is investing in. So some of you might have caught some information here and there about these projects, but I'm involved in some of them. I won't say that. For example, there's a very important project that all of you must be hearing about, which is the Musi River redevelopment. So I don't have even a tangential involvement in it, but there are some other projects with which I'm very directly involved. So I can speak about all of them. So one very big ticket project which is happening is called setting up the new city or the future city. So the drive that the Chief Minister has is that, as all of us know, Hyderabad as a city was founded 437 years ago by Qutub Shah the First. Then 250 years later, British formed Sikandrabad. Approximately 30 years earlier, the Cyberabad, as we understand it, is formed by Chandrababu Naidu Garu. So he now feels that world has changed quite a lot and there is a need to now move to the next level. So he's planning to set up a satellite township very close to the airport, roughly in about 20,000 acres, which will be the next wave of, or the next level of evolution when it comes to urban development, urban planning, etc. So what is happening is, so I'm involved in this project in a direct way, in the sense that I supervise this project. So 9 zones have been created in this future city. And some of these are very, very kind of contemporary, very relevant. So for example, one of the zone will be an education city. And our interest is to attract some of the best global universities to set up their campuses here. And we have already started discussions with some big American names. It won't be appropriate to tell those names here because we have not concluded anything. But the initial interest is very strong. So our expectation is that about 10 universities, global universities, will come to Hyderabad and they will be located in the education hub. One zone will be on sports. So as we all know, India has performed very, very underwhelmingly in the last Olympics, given the population, etc. The performance is very underwhelming. So the belief is that if right kind of coaching, sports science, sports technology, sports medicine, if all that is delivered in a very professional way from a young age into those who are inclined towards sports or who have some kind of merit to participate in professional sports, that India can eventually start becoming a champion nation. And it also will give a big fillip to India when it tries to host Olympic Games or another big ticket event. So one will be a sports hub, one hub will be on medical tourism. Some of you may be aware that Hyderabad has some of the best healthcare institutions, and we do get international patients, but they are largely from countries like Bangladesh or Afghanistan or some of these African countries or Middle East countries, etc. We don't get patients at all from, let us say, affluent countries like the US or Canada or Europe, etc., despite the fact that there are so many challenges in their healthcare systems. So what our research has shown that they will be more trustworthy of their own institutions. So we have started talking to some of them, encouraging them to come and set up their campuses here, and so on and so forth. There'll be, of course, these are peripheral zones. The large zone will be still continued with manufacturing. There has to be some economic imperative in that cluster as well. So we'll be setting up manufacturing clusters related to life sciences, related to electric mobility, related to electronics. And then, of course, one zone will be about housing, townships, retail, entertainment, convention, and so on and so forth. So this is one. And the other important thing is that this whole township is being developed as a net zero city. So no vehicular traffic will be allowed inside this zone, which does not comply with zero emission norms. Similarly, there is a 5,000 acres of forest area abutting this 15,000 acres, where the intention is to create very dense forest with walkways, with water bodies. So there's a very strong element of nature, greenery. It can be used both for recreation, and it also provides a green lung space to that kind of township. So this is one very big ticket project. Musi River project is something, I'm not involved in it now, but approximately 20 years ago, I used to work as the vice chairman of the Hyderabad Urban Development Authority, what is now called as HMDA. In those days, it was called Huda. And in Huda also, this project was designed, but we just could not go ahead because of one fundamental dilemma. I mean, you can do all kinds of things, but where will you get water in the river? Into the river, and you can beautify, you can do this, you can do that, but where is the water going to come from? And all kinds of thoughts were given. We'll construct some rubber dams, and someone else has done it in this city or that country. Let us study it. Engineers should figure out, or we should dig deep bore wells and recharge and stuff like that. But nothing looked very practical. The government has decided to revive that project again, but the fundamental issue on where will water come from has been provided a very elegant solution. And the answer is that the water will come from the Godavari River. So Godavari will be linked to Musi, and studies have been done to understand how much of water is required to make this river perennial. And of course, as you would have seen all over the world, if there is a perennial river with ample amount of water happening, lots of things can happen along with it. You can have umpteen opportunities of urban growth for recreation, for setting up cultural centers, for setting up pedestrian walkways, for recreation, for sports, and so on and so forth. So that is, again, something which is very important that is happening. The third big ticket project that I want to speak about is the decision to look at Hyderabad and the state in the form of 3 concentric circles. The ORR is already there. There will be very shortly one more ring road, which is called the RRR. And the zones in between these 3 will be designed in a very different way altogether. So whatever is within ORR will be seen as core urban. Whatever is between ORR and RRR will be seen as peri-urban. And what is beyond RRR is all rural Telangana. So different strategies of setting up industry, setting up institutions, provided infrastructure is all getting designed for these kind of zones. So if something is hardcore urban, only some kind of activities will be more suited here. So we are preparing master plans to kind of accommodate those kind of activities. Whatever is there between ORR and RRR, some of the industrial activities, some of the townships which will come up there can accommodate some things where lesser levels of skills can do. And beyond RRR, which is the rural Telangana, something else can also happen. You may also wonder that all these things are heavily infrastructure focused initiatives. What about the people? So all this is a development which requires capital investment, roads will be built, power lines will be laid, this will happen, that will happen, tall buildings will come, and so on and so forth. But what about the common person? What about the person whose livelihoods also are kind of vulnerable, and the state needs to take care of that? So again, I'm happy to share with you that lots of livelihood support initiatives are being planned, and actually some of them have been actioned upon. And one of the biggest livelihood initiative, I'll kind of try to now start wrapping up, but I'll tell you a phrase which summarizes what is this livelihood initiative will be all about. So, Chief, some of you might have read about it in the newspapers. Chief Minister has announced it and spoken about it on 2-3 occasions. This is called Mahila Shakti. The interest of the government is to ensure that 1 crore women become crore-patis. So, కోటి మంది మహిళలకి 1 crore వాళ్ళకి ఆస్తి ఇచ్చే పరిస్థితిలో వాళ్ళని తీసుకురావడం అట్లా జరుగుతుంది. So obviously these will all be women from very kind of working class kind of family backgrounds. Many of them would be living in bastis, many of them would be in the rural areas, some of them would be members of self-help groups, some of them would be practicing micro-entrepreneurship, some of them would be just kind of young people who are coming out of their education, etc. So idea is to target 1 crore such people, and this benefit or this ambition rather to make them crorepati will happen through multiple ways. So in some of them, I am also involved. One of the initiatives which has been announced on 1st of October, we launched it formally, is called the Women Entrepreneurship Platform. So all the micro entrepreneurs, all the new generation of women, the young women who are completing their education and coming out, how can we introduce micro entrepreneurship and introduce it in a way that there are very strong guarantees that it will work. It is very easy to sign checks and distribute, but that is not the model. Beyond signing check, how do you ensure that they are first selecting the right line of activity? All the support systems that are required to support that line of activity, are they present? What is the institutional arrangement? So it's being considered in lots of depth. There have been other beneficiary programs also. In my experience, I've seen hundreds of them. The interest is just to sign some checks, do some announcements, and just move on. But this is not how these kind of initiatives will be run. So there's a very strong people-centric focus as well. While infra, roads, buildings and all will come, there's a strong people-centric focus also, particularly amongst those whose livelihoods are quite precarious. So these are some of the things which will happen possibly in the next, these all will be kick-started shortly, possibly in the next 1 year itself, and then they will roll out as per the time that they are required. But I am very, very confident that just as I recounted some of the momentous incidents or decisions which has helped Hyderabad gain much momentum, steam, steal a march over its competitors like Bangalore, just as an example. But here, a series of decisions. So this is something which I notice, and maybe 25 years later, if Times of India still asks me to write something, this is what I'll comment upon. That I was witness to a time where half a dozen decisions of different kinds were taken at the same time, which has given a very big fillip to Hyderabad and obviously by implication to the state of Telangana as well. So, of course, but all that is based on a very strong foundation of 400 plus years. Most of it, particularly in the recent vintage of the last 30-40 years or so, has been captured in this book. And as I said, I was fortunate to be an eyewitness and an active participant in some of the things which have been written about. So this is very, very fascinating. I was given this book. Next day I had to travel to Delhi. I thought that I'll read over a period of time, but when he got in the flight, I opened it. By the time it landed in Delhi, I finished reading it because it's so easy to read and it's so kind of, I mean, it's really it's a work of a genius, work of an artist. So please pick up your copies, and my congratulations once again to Dinesh ji. Thank you very much.
Dinesh will now present his book.
Good evening, everybody. It's a tough task because Mr. Jayesh Ranjan has painted a rosy picture of the future. So I'll take you back for a few centuries. And so first of all, let me thank Guruswamy Center, Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, Somshekhar, and the entire team for putting this event together at such a short notice and inviting me to speak about the book and an eminent panel to discuss the book. For someone coming from Delhi, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing a room full of people interested in a subject, and I can see a lot of familiar faces, movers and shakers. I'm not going to name all of them. Many of them I have interviewed for my book, and people who have been my friends. I visited their institutes. I thought I'll first listen to the panel and then speak, but Somshekhar has reversed the order. So let me put forth before you some of my thoughts on, so that I can introduce the book and leave it to the panelists and all of you to dissect it. I'm not going to get into the details, but I'll just try to give you an overview. First of all, let me tell you why a book on Hyderabad. Of course, in general, as we know that after formation of Telangana, there has been a resurgence of interest in subjects relating to Telangana and particularly relating to the past and the journey of Hyderabad. And in fact, we have had several books on Hyderabad, city biographies, historical accounts, coffee table books, and some excellent academic work by Indian and international scholars, which are there. Then there are a lot of hagiographic accounts of the past. They continue to be written, in fact, relating to Asafjai period. And last week, in fact, a new book on the 4th and 5th Nizam of Hyderabad was released in Hyderabad. So that there's another strand where people are looking at the past. और आप सब जानते हैं हैदराबाद किस्से कहानियों का शहर है. All of us have grown with number of stories. You heard lot of them, and we believe in them. And unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of those stories are now traveling to us via social media. So which what I call the social media literature. So that's another sort of narrative about Hyderabad. So amidst all this, then also while researching for the book, I came across two kinds of dominant lines of thinking, popular among people who live and people who are Hyderabadis outside. One is that people either lament the decay of Hyderabad, the devouring of the old city, the old Hyderabad by the new one, or there are another set of people who paint a rosy picture of the glorious past, the golden age that has passed. So amidst all these contesting narratives, I thought there was still a gap in understanding and answering this larger question, which was for me a curiosity project, that what makes Hyderabad different, as Mr. Ranjan referred to Lucknow. And there are so many parallels, which cities which are, when Hyderabad and Bangalore started at more or less at the same time, they had a similar trajectory. So what makes Hyderabad different, and what are the factors that have led to what it is today? So that was the larger question which I wanted to answer. Then the question was, how do I fill this gap in this whole journey? I'm very glad that we are meeting at Guruswamy Center, which is physically located in Secunderabad. As some scholars have said, that the present day Hyderabad is a perfect blend of the medieval, the modern and the postmodern. So we are in the, and I grew up in old city, in localities Begum Bazar and then Petla Burj, and currently for the past week I have been living in Kutbiguda, which takes its name from the Qutub Shahi period. So physically there are three segments of the city, one can say, and we are in Secunderabad, which is the modern phase, and the post-modern is what you described, Cyberabad, and now we are going beyond the future city and all that. So Secunderabad represents the core of modern and Cyberabad the post-modern. So right now, while we are sitting here, we are equidistant from both the kind of the past and also the future. And there are no boundaries between these three. They intermingle, all the three cities intermingle, they talk to each other, people move into each other, yet they retain their certain characteristics. And that is what is fascinating about Hyderabad. So it's a continuum. So I wanted to capture that, and that was my attempt in writing this book. I wanted to capture some of that beauty. So my book is also not strictly about history. As I said, there have been historical accounts and people have written about that. And in fact, bookshops in Hyderabad and elsewhere are confused whether to put this, going by the title, to put it in the cookery section or not. Because in fact, a lot of them did. By the way, that's a segment that sells very well. So even if they put there, I'm sure it will attract some attention. So in this book, the attempt is where the past is talking to the present and present is talking to the future. And I leave it the future, there are only a couple of pages. As I said, maybe there should be more books on that. So I have the medieval blends with the modern and modern blends with the postmodern. So there are no silos. We cannot look at these 3 or 4 segments now in isolation. That's what is the fascinating about the journey of this city. Within this framework, when I started looking at, because very often there is this reference to Hyderabad being a knowledge city. So, and there are theoretical frameworks. I'm not a theoretician, so I'm not going into that. And by the way, none of those theoretical frameworks apply. Nobody can explain the story of Hyderabad doesn't fit into any of the theoretical frameworks of knowledge city. What are knowledge cities? Where knowledge-based industries or activities are dominant force. They are the economic drivers. And I mean, it's rather amusing when people talk that, okay, I mean, very recently a union minister was saying that let's build more Silicon Valleys. We'll have some buildings and we can put everybody together. So that whole idea that a city, a knowledge city or a so-called Silicon city can be built only with buildings. So that notion is still there among the policymakers at the very top level. I mean, that's a very recent statement. If you Google that, you'll be able to see. So it's not and there are, up north, there are many places which are called knowledge parks and knowledge cities in Noida and elsewhere and many other places. So it's a physical infrastructure alone could make a place knowledge city. India would have been a knowledge superpower long time ago because we had so many, such nomenclature. For knowledge creation, you need institutions. Institutions of higher learning, institutions of humanities, technical knowledge, universities, research institutions, labs, and think tanks like Guruswamy Center and many others. So all that, those are the places where knowledge is generated, where it is disseminated. You need enlightened people to run those institutions. Again, institutions alone are not sufficient to generate knowledge. You need enlightened people to run those institutions. Even that is not sufficient for a knowledge city, the creation of a knowledge city, because you need mechanisms to convert that knowledge into some useful activity or economic activity, or and we need to build those bridges where this knowledge can be converted. For example, the most famous example is the IIT Kanpur. When the 10-year project ended, the Americans, KI, Kanpur India American project, they wrote that we thought that if we create something like MIT in India, in a city like Kanpur, it will lead to a creation of a system there where things will get translated into, economic activity, industries would come out, but none of that happened. Of course, IIT Kanpur contributed in many other ways, but it did not do so much for the city of Kanpur. So you need mechanisms where those skills and knowledge can be converted into useful, systems. So for all that you need a conducive policy environment. So these are all the ingredients for a knowledge city, which still people are not realizing, and it's a long process. So therefore I tried to look at the trajectory of Hyderabad through some of its key institutions. And that's where I think it differs from the chronological way of telling history of how things happened. And when I look at key institutions, say Osmania University or Nizami Observatory, the medical school, the Osmania General Hospital, the Central Lab, RRL, which is now called IICT, and a whole lot of defense and industrial, techno-industrial cluster, and you had IDPL, ECIL, CMC, and a whole lot of other public sector industries, and also schemes like software technology parks. So it is not only the institutions, but also the policies to implement them. STPI is an institution as well as a policy, which was a novel policy. So that's why I have looked at the knowledge institutions as key builders of a knowledge city, and those are the micro stories you will find in the book. But was this whole process of institution building smooth? Certainly not. The journey has been topsy-turvy. There have been lots of twists and turns. Everything was contested at a different point of time. Nothing was smooth and nothing was linear. That's what happens whenever such things happen. A development like that takes place. So I've tried to capture. I'm not getting into the micro stories which I want you to read. There are a lot of interesting stories which challenge the current notions. The problem is that when you say something as things are, people will not believe it. तो हमने सुना नहीं है. So that is the whole purpose कि जो आपने नहीं सुना है वो इसमें है. That's what I want to emphasize कि भाई जब हम किस्से कहानियों के साथ बड़े होते हैं, so we tend to believe them so much कि ऐसा नहीं हुआ होगा. So therefore I relied on the archival records, I relied on the documented histories, which is largely different from what we have been hearing about various institutions. So those stories you might find interesting. So besides looking at the process of, I also looked at the process of institution building. Most of the histories of Osmania University begin with a date. Okay, on this date, this institute was set up, or this lab was set up. But there's a prehistory, there's a process through which an institution is built, and that's what reflects when it grows. So I think that's more important when you look at the institution. If you just look at only STPI as a starting date, you will not be able to capture the whole story. So what are the processes that went into creation of some of those institutions? I think that's important. So that's what I have tried to do. And when you look at the processes, you come across a lot of interesting people. Institutions are built by people, institutions are built by ideas. And people had grand visions. I'm glad that you referred to riverfront project. So if Vishwesharaya was alive today, he would be amused that still we are discussing Musi riverfront after 100 years. That was his vision. He had just returned from Europe and he wanted to wanted Hyderabad to look like a European city. It should have a riverfront, it should have all those buildings and boulevards and things like that. So he imagined that 100 years ago, and we are still discussing. So history is important, that present is talking to the past. So so he, in fact I can quote him, that he said in some time in 1930, much later after he built the city plan and all that, Hyderabad of future would become a beautiful, healthy and efficient city. So we are still to achieve that goal, so to say. So 100 years later we are still talking of Musi. In 1920, Syed Ross Masood, who inspired E.M. Foster to write Passage of India, he dreamt of making Hyderabad the intellectual capital of India with Osmania University as its center. He wrote, "The day is not near," addressing the Nizam, "that under your rule Hyderabad will see as great an intellectual awakening as was witnessed by the Islamic world in the days of great caliphs of Baghdad." So those are the grand visions, that building Hyderabad as an intellectual city, building Hyderabad as a knowledge city through an institution, that was the vision which was seen. And I don't know how many of us in this room have heard of Major General S.L. Bhatia, who was a war hero, and he was the medical officer in both the wars, and then he was in the Indian Army, and he was heading the health services after post 1948. So when one of the first labs moved from Kunur to Hyderabad, the NRL, the Nutrition Research Laboratories it was called, which is what is known as NIN today. So that was the first lab to move from another place to Hyderabad. So on that day, inauguration day, he foresaw that Hyderabad would become a hub of scientific research in future. So he had that vision that, okay, here is one lab moving to Hyderabad, so that will lead to, a chain of events later on. So those are so visions are important, and of course, the most talked about vision is that of Chandrababu Naidu, which you spoke, and his vision was less than a line. He just said, how can Hyderabad beat Bangalore? So that comparison is there all the time. So that was the vision which he started. The first day in office, he wanted to address that question. And that's how the whole lot of ideas. So I think it's also important to look at the ideas. How are the ideas generated from? Where are the ideas coming? And the last point before I close is about the globalization, the process of globalization. I mean, it's not as if globalization began and at the stroke of midnight on July 24, 1991, when Dr. Manmohan Singh announced the new economic policy. I mean, we always take that as a sacrosanct dead. Okay, that's the day India became, the licensed Raja ended. But the process of globalization, the ingredients became much later. I'm only going to talk about Hyderabad. I mean, if you want to put a date, it started in Hyderabad in 1876. When Salar Jung won, Mir Turab Ali Khan went to UK and he met people there and invited them to come to India and to Hyderabad and settle down. And one of them was Gaurnath Chattopadhyay. I mean, everybody in Hyderabad knows, and he was the father of Sarojini Chattopadhyay, who became Sarojini Naidu later. And so it is not just an individual. That triggered a lot of educational reforms in Hyderabad and number of institutions which we see. So the foundation of the knowledge city kind of started with globalization and import of ideas from different parts. So it was not as if everything was sui generis, everything was indigenous. Like you had Syed Hussain Bilgrami. These are the two key personalities who developed. He brought Bilgrami from Lucknow. So it was an import into Hyderabad. And in the early 20th century, a lot of such personalities coming to Hyderabad. The two chloroform commissions, the training of Hyderabadi doctors, Dr. M.G. Naidu was sent to Edinburgh, and several other doctors were sent. So this exchange of ideas, exchange of, inflow of, because what is globalization? It's not just the investment part, it is the inflow of, in-migration of people, in-migration of talent, in-migration of ideas. And that's what makes a city or a cluster dynamic. And later on we had Mr. Akbar Haidri, we had Syed Ras Masood, we had H.K. Sherwani. They all came out of, from outside Hyderabad. It's not as if Hyderabad didn't have talent, but Hyderabad was open to ideas. The rulers were open to ideas from outside. That's how a lot of these institutions which we see as the foundation of Hyderabad were formed. So the process of globalization, I argue, began much before, decades before 1991, and there are a number of examples of that. And the inspiration for Osmania University as a vernacular university came from Japan, not from any other institutions in India. Syed Ras Masood went to Japan and he wrote a 400-page report where he proposed that how Japanese were teaching everything from primary education to the higher technical education in the local language, and we should emulate that. So ideas were coming from everywhere. And they were all interconnected. Vishwesvaraya was talking to Ras Masood. They were all intellectually connected because Japan was a shining example for many of Indian princely states to follow other than the British model. So that idea came from that. And if you talk about more recent time, inspiration for Cyberabad and Vision 2020 came from Cyberjaya of Malaysia. We imported the whole idea. It's a different way we implemented, but the idea that something like that could be done was when Mr. Babu saw physically that something, a massive cluster is being built. I'll just end with a summary. This is just an overview. There are a lot of other things which you'll find in the book interesting, and I'm sure the panelists will throw light on that. And the book is titled Beyond Biryani. So I'm not supposed to talk about biryani. So we have to talk something beyond biryani, but I can't resist borrowing the biryani metaphor, because just as biryani is a blend of, say, aromatic rice, selection of meat and spices, the journey of modern day Hyderabad is also a story of its institutions, new ideas, politics and policies, and people who implemented those policies. And of course, the garnishing on this mixture is the assimilative culture of Hyderabad, which I'm sure we are going to hear more about it. And this biryani of Hyderabad has been slow cooked, and it has taken 100 years or so. So I'll end on that, and with the permission of the chair, one sentence. कि हैदराबाद में कई अलग अलग दौर में कई शायर हुए हैं जिन्होंने हैदराबाद के शान में बहुत ही अपनी कविताएं गढ़ी, शेर और शायरी रखी. तो उसमें से एक दो लाइन में आपके लिए पेश करना चाहूँगा. एक शायर थे सिकंदर अली वज़द, जो हैदराबाद से बाद में औरंगाबाद चले गए थे, इट सीम्स इन 1950s. तो उन्होंने लिखा है, बहुत खुशनुमा शहर देखे हैं मैंने, बहुत खुशनुमा शहर देखे हैं मैंने, मगर तेरा जादू कहीं भी नहीं है. ही इज़ एड्रेसिंग इट एज टू हैदराबाद. बहुत खुशनुमा शहर देखे हैं मैंने, मगर तेरा जादू कहीं भी नहीं है. अगर महरो उल्फत की जन्नत कहीं है, अगर महरो उल्फत की जन्नत कहीं है, तो बेशक यही है, यही है, यही है. थैंक यू.
Leaving with a lot of ideas, trends, what happened, the backstories, and finally ending with the undeniable biryani and a shahri, as they say, to set the mode for this panel discussion. I'll request Mohan to conduct the panel discussion.
Good evening. I was telling my daughter today, I was driving her to my farm outside Hyderabad near Shamirpet, and I said that, she said, what's significant about this place that you chose this place? I said it is significant because this part we are passing through economically is the richest part of India. Medchal Malkajgiri district has a per capita income of 8 lakhs. It is wealthier than Goa, and I then went back in my mind to a drive I was taking from Delhi to Chandigarh with a British economist, and he said, what would you like to see India as? I said, if India after 20 or 30 years, rest of India becomes like this, I'd be quite happy. And today I was telling my daughter that if the rest of the country catches up with what is happening here, it will be a totally different country. Because the foundation to this transformation which we are seeing, we're witnessing, was laid by people sitting here, people like Acharya who mentioned in the book, Jayesh who's been working on it. And before that, for 100 years, the building of institutions in the city, whether it's the Usmania University or the RRL in Hyderabad, or the Astronomy Institute, or the Physics Institute, or the Mathematical Society, or Hyderabad Science Society, all this set the basis for a transformation of a capacity in the city for absorption of new ideas, new people, and new technology. I was just telling Jayesh that, do you realize that Hyderabad was built by people who came from outside, mostly, and including the ruling classes, which came from outside. And today, as I keep seeing around Hyderabad, all the workmen are from outside. The factory workers, most of them are from outside. It's not because there's opportunity here. It's just that demographically we've all outgrown the rest of the country. The South has stopped growing. Demographically, we've hit zero population growth 2 years ago. So we need labor, we need manpower, and as time goes, we need a lot more of brain power from outside again. So this influx of outside minds and capacities into Hyderabad needs to continue. And for that, you need to create the ecosystem which you're creating right now, which makes it attractive for people. And my workmen tell me that, sir, one thing is, nobody treats you as Gair here. जो भी है, वेतन दे देते हैं, काम करा लेते हैं, and everybody is nice and easy going, friendly. Nobody complains कि तेरे पास गाड़ी आ गई, तेरे पास घर आ गई. Because that kind of antagonism doesn't. It's this ecosystem of Hyderabad which is quite unique. You know, nobody calls outsiders Guzbaitis in the city. Outsiders are all welcome. They're all, one of us. And once everybody comes to Hyderabad, my family came to Hyderabad 100 years ago. But I feel nothing but Hyderabadi. When I go to Tamil Nadu, I look at the villages there and I look at my hometowns, my ancestral place. I have no connection with them. Hyderabad is, when I went to school, went to college, did everything. So everything, the city has suffused us, permeated us. So this is the transformation which people like present government, Chief Minister, Jayesh, Acharya, and all are bringing to the city. There's no struggle of the old to retain an identity. What we have seen is whenever I go outside Hyderabad, people keep saying that, I went to Hyderabad last week. It's fantastic. I sit in Hyderabad in my crib, think roads are overcrowded and everything. Sewage is overflowing, garbage is piling up. But people come to Hyderabad and say that, this is the place to be at. And it is being reflected in the demographic trends. 240% growth in the last decade. Fastest growing metropolis area in the country. At the rate at which Hyderabad is growing, it will be second to Delhi in 25 years as an urban agglomeration. You're talking of Outer Ring Road. Outer Ring Road is built up already. The next ring road will be built up. And I'm hoping that, there will be a third ring road sometime because that's the kind of traffic you're building up. Already, it takes from Shamirpet to Secunderabad, it takes 1 hour in the evening. Rows of cars, Genome Valley was built there, and I can see the transformation Genome Valley has done to surrounding areas. When I did a study on the poverty of Telangana, it was in 1984, it was on par with Bihar, the poorest region in the country. Telangana was the same, if you took out Hyderabad, as Rayalaseema, without. But Telangana today has become extremely wealthy, extremely powerful in the country's polity, in the country's economy. That's because, the foundational basis was laid much long ago. Not only did they create an intellectual basis, but a cultural basis for accepting of change, accepting of new ideas. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I'm glad that, we have two top people to talk about it. And we're all here today. We'll listen to praises of our own city. But I hope that somewhere in this process that somebody begins to tear up some of these ideas together, because there's a degree of complacency creeping into the city also. That everything we know the right way to do it, but much is wrong in the city. And we've seen the floods in the city. We've seen the Musi project of Vishwesvaraya is being dusted up now. When I read about it in the book, And I said, this is exactly what the present Chief Minister is talking about now. Because you build the city around the Musi River. Anyway, I stumbled into the book quite by accident. I was actually looking for a recipe book. and then I came across this Beyond Biryani, and I said, making of a global, I thought, there's going to be the new fusion cooking in Hyderabad. And so I bought the book, and I began reading it like Jayesh. I couldn't put it down. I went through it in one long session, not 2 hours, but I'm slower now. I needed more time. But I kept underlining, and I said, it was a remarkably researched book. Got details, got accuracies, dates, people, what they did. It's quite remarkable. And of course, now I recommend it as a recipe for success of other cities in this country. Thank you very much.
Request Mr. Acharya to speak on it.
And Navaratri greetings. Of course, Biryani and Navaratri don't normally go together. So that's why Beyond Biryani. So Dinesh ji ended with a sher. I would like to begin with a sher from Quli Qutub Shah, the founder of this city. He's supposed to be the first Urdu poet. When city was being set up, he said, most of you must have heard this before. Mera shahar loga su mamur kar rakhya jo darya mein meen ya sami. God, keep my city as full of people as you have kept rivers filled with fish. That confirms the demographic, the future of Hyderabad, the growth of Hyderabad, as Dr. Guruswamy was mentioning. He only wanted people to come here. But the way it has grown in the last 430 years is remarkable. And I must compliment Dinesh ji for bringing out those interesting milestones in its journey. The city which was set up to ease congestion in Golconda. Basically, Golconda was getting congested. Another thing happened in between was the Hussain Sagar tank was built around 1560, 62 to be precise. Hussain Shah Wali, the son-in-law of Ibrahim Quli, he built this. And the ruler felt that there is a large water body, there is scarcity of water in Golconda, let us move. And it took 30 years again. 1591 the city was founded. But what comes out very vividly in this book is that the phases also triggered by events. You talked about the First World War, the Second World War, the moving of the British from India and the independence, the Nizams rule. All these events are captured with such great detail. I have been in this city for last 30 years now. I am also an outsider like all of us, many of us. You are not. So, but as they say in Hyderabad, jo gandi pet ka pani pita ho rah jata idhar. So nahi chhota nahi usko yahan. So that is when we came to the city in 1983-84, it was a very small, sleepy kind of a town, and there was a level crossing between Begumpet and this part of the city. So the first flyover came. So gradually city started changing. But the transition after 90s was remarkable and fast. We were lucky in many ways that we had forward-looking leaders, bureaucracy which executed their plans. It was, in fact, Hyderabad was lucky for years, for 400 years, Hyderabad was lucky. The contribution of the Salajangs, the contribution of the ministers, the Mathur ministers, Kishan Prasad ji, all of them have contributed to the growth of Hyderabad in many ways. So the plan for the city which Visvesvaraya had prepared, that was another phase of the 1908 floods. So where the first vestiges of a modern city were thought of. to transform Hyderabad into a modern city. It was like a settlement before that. For 300-400 years, it was growing, but growing in a haphazard manner. Visvesvaraya, the first comments of Visvesvaraya are quite remarkable. He says that when I came here, I was shocked at this kind of sanitation and the... and he was, no wonder Ronald Ross found the mosquito parasite not too far away from here. That is another an event which he has captured very, very poignantly. The infighting between the scientific groups, Ronald Ross and his colleagues, how they run him down. All those stories have come out. In fact, he is more like he's not so much like a historian, he's more like a Dastan Goi. The Iranian tradition of storytelling. That's what makes this book very interesting and eminently readable. So I hope, in fact, I suggested to Jayesh, you must buy and give copies to all our officers. Those who read, people in I.A.S. stop reading. They claim that they know everything. So those... it's on record. सबको देना हैदराबाद में सब ऑफिसर्स को पढ़ाना yes. In fact, I suggested to many companies that you give as a Diwali corporate gift. Don't buy sweets and Haldiram, this thing and other packets and gift hampers. Give this book along with that. If gift hamper में ये भी डाल दो. So कुछ लोग खरीद रहे हैं. बिरयानी के साथ भी दे सकते हैं. ITC बिरयानी का देते हैं, hamper देते हैं. उसके साथ. Anyway, the events which are not widely known, like how Osmania University modeled on a Japanese model, which becomes the catalyst of growth of the scientific temper in the area. The research lab, the IICT, the CCMB, the CDFT, the entire chain of NGRI, the whole, in a way, Secunderabad has been the center. You are at the right place when you are talking of modern city. I also live in Secunderabad, I'm proud of it. So, how each one leading to another, it is like a series of happy coincidences. Like the biochemistry that you talked about, which brought in the pharma industry to Hyderabad, started with the research lab and the scientists who worked. You also tried to capture in many ways. The other day, one of the scientists who read this book, she commented that my contribution is not properly shown, somebody else's is shown. I said, don't look at the trees, look at the woods, look at the forest, the larger picture. There are interpersonal rivalries, interpersonal quarrels which are there, which is recorded also in some ways, but there are many which are biased. In that sense, Sharmaji, being a Hyderabadi, for him Hyderabad is a place in the heart. Like for us, wherever we are from, he might have moved to Delhi now, but you have to deal with this place with affection, with sensitivity, like you're dealing with your mother. You can't treat it shoddily. That comes out very, very, that sensitivity and the way you have handled the subjects have come out very, very vividly. So I compliment him once again. My role in the last, what I was doing, what Jayesh is doing now, 20 years ago. So in a way, I was witness to some of the events which unfolded, particularly in Genome Valley, which Dr. Guruswamy mentioned, how that area developed. It has been a labor of love for 20 years for us. Shamirpet, there was nothing beyond Shamirpet those days. In fact, I had a chairman in tourism department who said we used to go to Shamirpet to hunt leopards those days. you must be doing Sudhakar Reddy. So he used to mention like that. There was the lake and forest. Beyond Shamirpet was chosen because it was away from the city in many ways, but the ecosystem took time to build. We have Utkarsh, who was the consultant at that point in time from Ernst & Young. He helped us. The way government, the corporate sector, the academia work together to make it happen is a case in point. You have to. It is rare in any other city. That is why Hyderabad succeeded and others did not. कर लीजिए प्लीज, सब कर ही रहे तो कल मेरा भी कर लीजिए. So this building the ecosystem, again I am slightly hurt that Cyberabad has not kept up its promise. I was involved in many developments around Cyberabad. In terms of the greenery and the climate, we wanted a lot more plantation. It's become like a concrete jungle. I don't like there is scope for new cities coming up to have more trees planted, the more walk to work. The kind of the real estate, unfortunately, what has happened in the Cyberabad side of the city is real estate has taken over the development process. So they have made it impossible for the professionals working in that area to live in that. They have hiked the price so much. The idea those days was to walk to work. So the traffic every day in the evening, you will find Secunderabad road is clogged up to Jubilee Hills. This side, because at morning everyone goes, that's people live in Sainikpuri, people live in Alwal, and they go to Cyberabad. So that was to be avoided. That was our original plan. In fact, when we built the financial district, ICICI chairman then, Mr. Kamath, said, I don't want 25,000 people traveling in their cars. I will build a metro rail up to ICICI. He spent 1,000 crores building the largest office space in Asia those days, 4.2 million SFT. So it is the largest office space, and 25,000 people, now I think about 20,000 are there. So he said that if 20,000 people walk every day, travel, it will get clogged. So this kind of planning process is very important. We need to focus on that. Jayesh, I'm happy, is carrying forward the legacy, and I hope and pray Hyderabad keeps getting good rulers. Hyderabad keeps getting good people to execute it. Let us all hope and pray. Apart from the prayer of the founder that it will be full of people, let it be full of knowledge, let it be full of goodwill and the harmony that the syncretic culture of Hyderabad we are all proud of, the Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb that we talk about. Let it grow. We have the 9th Nizam, self-proclaimed 9th Nizam, who is there. Let him also bless the process. So may the city keep growing. Inshallah, it will be the best in this part of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Acharya Garu, for not just lauding a lot of things that happened, but also giving us a flip side of modernity or modern development. And all of us feel Cyberabad is a concrete jungle. And also,
I forgot to mention one thing. Till many years, Cyberabad did not have a sewerage system. It was sitting on a cesspool. Even now, large parts are, in fact, 60% of Hyderabad is not connected by a sewerage network. It was the old sewerage network of Nizams' time, which is continuing. Acharya might have built it those days, 1940s. I worked in sewerage, HMW, SSB, so that's how they used to tell.
So while many who come from abroad feel, a visit to Cyberabad is something like New York, Malaysia and all that, some of us believe that we are going in the way of Bangalore. So I don't want to be heading in the Bangalore direction in terms of traffic. So I think we'll surely find solutions. I request Sajjad to give his views on the book and what he feels this globalization is to conservation and past.
Either starts or ends with a couplet, so I'll both start and end with a couplet each. वो छेड़ दिया आना मैं वैसे ही I am used to using a lot of poetry whenever I speak. यहाँ the people who spoke before me, I thought I would not do that here, but छेड़ दिया आचार्य साहब ने भी. किताब के बारे में शर्मा साहब बहुत बहुत मुबारक आपको. इतनी अच्छी किताब बहुत दिनों के बाद पढ़ने को मिली है. Excellent, balanced work, extremely readable. Lot of information, very few points on which I might disagree, but that is for another day, not today. पहले तो when I got the same reaction कि भाई बिरयानी के आगे हलीमी होगी और क्या होगा. अब The problem with me was when I started writing regularly for Times of India about 10 years back. Ayub Ali Khan is sitting here. He just write on Hyderabad. अरे मैं क्या लिखूं? कुछ भी लिखो. अरे कुछ भी का कुछ definition दो. अरे बिरयानी पे लिखो, हलीम पे लिखो. The first column I wrote for him was Biryani, Halim and more on Hyderabad's menu. So that was the first article I wrote. मैं बोला यही कुछ होगा यार, बिरयानी की बात करनी है. अब किताब जब आई तो मुझे परेशान हो गया. मैंने इसमें मैं क्या करने वाला हूँ. But I said I'll start with the couplet, and that couplet sums up the book, I think. So this was, I don't know who wrote it. It was quoted when an argument arose after the 1908 floods, when Hyderabad was being reconstructed. Some people wanted the old to be retained fully and there should be no change. Others were for modernization. ये जो debate चल रहा है, जो बातें चल रही हैं. I remember someone in some article somewhere has quoted this, a couplet. Couplet ये था कि वज़ा के पाबंद हम, दीवानगी जिद्दत पसंद, फिर गलाया जाए लोहा खैस की जंजीर का. वज़ा के पाबंद हम, we are bound by tradition. दीवानगी हमारी, जुनून हमारा ऐसा है कि हम तो मॉडर्निस्ट हैं. तो एक ही सूरत हो सकती कि हम पागल हैं, हम मजनू हो गए, फिर रहे सरा में, तो उसकी जंजीरें गला के फिर से हमारे लिए जंजीरें बनाए. यही बात मैं समझता हूँ बहुत खूबसूरती से शर्मा साहब ने इस किताब में सम अप किया है. A lot of things which generally people who are superficially knowledgeable about Hyderabad do not know. You can find here a lot of things about, without going into details about, as people have mentioned before me, about Usmania University, about the scientific temper, that all those things are there, and also how institutions evolved. बातें हुई हैं हैदराबाद के culture की, how it attracts people and how people are attracted to Hyderabad, and there is a long history. ऐसा नहीं है कि हर एक को आने दिया और खामोश रहे. जब आने वालों ने हमको तकलीफ दी तो फिर उसका भी जवाब दिया, चाहे वो मुल्की नॉन मुल्की हो या उससे पहले क्या कहते भाई, दखनी और आफाकी हो. In every period this has been there. But the strange thing about Hyderabad is people come here, settle, and within a generation they start cribbing against those who are coming after them. This hasn't happened. I'm telling you. I came across a couplet. Again, back to poetry sub, that's where I find most of my interesting information. Mughalpura. When the Nizams came here, they were Mughals, the Mughal army was there, so they needed a place for the Mughal nobility and elite. So they found this place ideal, and they created what was called the high-end locality. उस ज़माने का जब लील बंजारा हिल समझिए आप, मुगलपुरा and these Mughals, अयूब भाई असरा हैं, वो भी उसी इलाके करीब रहते. तो मुगलपुरे में मुगल थे, मुगल आए थे दिल्ली से यहाँ. And we have this guy who soon after that, he is a resident of Mughalpura, and he says to the newcomers, संभल कर चल यहाँ आए हिंदुस्तानी, ये मुगलपुरा है तेरी दिल्ली नहीं है. अब ये तो हमारा रवैया है, और खुद हमने भी कहा संभल कर चल यहाँ आए हिंदुस्तानी. उस जमाने तक सब हिंदुस्तान का मतलब नॉर्थ इंडिया वाज हिंदुस्तान, वी वर दक्कन. तो हैदराबाद वाज नॉट अ पार्ट ऑफ हिंदुस्तान. सो ये जो नॉर्थ से आए, आज भी वो फैमिलीज हैं कई जो अपने आप को खुद हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं, और हैदराबादी उनको हिंदुस्तानी कहता है. आज भी जनरेशन हो गए, वो अगर वापस हिंदुस्तान जाए, मतलब नॉर्थ इंडिया जाए, तो वहाँ के लोग खारिज कर देंगे, ये तुमको बोलना तक नहीं आता, यू स्पीक अ डिफरेंट लैंग्वेज. तो ये है कि संभल कर चल यहाँ आए हिंदुस्तानी, ये मुगलपुरा है तेरी दिल्ली नहीं है. तो दिस हैज हैपेंड टाइम एंड अगेन, राइट फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग. And this has been a notable trait. You have Qutub Shah, court poet, I think it was who mentions that people come from abroad and settle here and forget about their country. And you have 350 years later a poet from Delhi who passed away recently, 6-7 साल पहले, जुबैर रिजवी, काफ़ी आते थे यहाँ मुशायरों में. कहा तो मुसाफिर उत्तर का जो शहरों शहरों घूमा, दिल्ली देखी, बम्बई देखी, कलकत्ता भी देखा, विंध्याचल की गोद में लेकिन दक्कन शहर एक ऐसा, जो आया एक बार यहाँ वो अपने देश न लौटा. दक्कन शहर जब तक हैदराबाद had become synonymous with Deccan. तो this is हैदराबाद, this has been हैदराबाद. और यह है कि उसकी अजमत हमेशा रही है, हमेशा रहेगी. और मेहरबान उसको मिलते रहेंगे. तो हजरात तो यहाँ बैठे हैं. Throughout the history of Hyderabad you find people who have come here and contributed. बाज़ लोगों को कुछ ज़्यादा ही इम्पोर्टेंस दे दी गई है. सर अकबर हैदरी, अपॉलॉजी सर, मुझे उनके खिलाफ ज़ाती कुछ कहना नहीं है, मगर यह है कि एक ट्रेट था उस ज़माने से आज तक मैंने देखा है कि वॉट एवर गुड दैट हैपेंड इन हैदराबाद ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम वॉज क्रेडिटेड टू सर अकबर हैदरी. जो गलती हुई, अरे वो तो निज़ाम का है. ये दिस हैज़ बीन देयर फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम. आपने कुछ और बुज़ुर्गों के नाम लिए जिनसे मैं इख्तिलाफ रखता हूँ, मगर वो फिर किसी और दिन में उस पर बहस होगी. हारून खान शेरवानी साहब को इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा जगह आपने दी है. मैं उनसे उनके ख़यालात से और उनके कंट्रीब्यूशन से उतना मुत्तफ़िक़ नहीं हूँ जितना कि आपने इसमें दिखाया है. फिर वही बात है कि उनमें बल नहीं गया था वो हिंदुस्तानियत का. वो तारीख़ लिखते वक्त भी हिंदुस्तानी ही रहे और आखिरी तक हिंदुस्तानी रहे, हमको तकलीफ़ें देते रहे. This has happened with Hyderabad, but Hyderabad has always been grateful for the people who have come and contributed to its development. And इत्तेफाक की बात है ये, मतलब सोम साहब की कुछ इसमें साजिश होगी. 2 लोगों को यहाँ ला के बिठाया आई.ए.एस ऑफिसर. मैं हमेशा लड़ता रहा हूँ बहुत सारे आई.ए.एस, मगर ऐसे 2 ऑफिसर्स को यहाँ बिठाया है साबिक़, और जिनका एहसान मेरे शहर पे है इसलिए मुझ पे भी है. ये अजीब, आप मैं कुछ कह भी नहीं सकता. अब ये दोनों में ये है कि जय साहब जब थे हुडा के जिम्मेदार, आपने एक प्रोजेक्ट दिया था, आपको शायद याद है नहीं है. 1100 monuments and buildings were identified under that project from a grant for that. 100 of those as a first effort were shortlisted, inspected by the Heritage Committee. Of course, Acharya साहब के बाद आज तक Heritage Committee ही नहीं हुई. He was the person who constituted the last Heritage Committee of Hyderabad. I had the honor of serving there as a member, sir. But ये 2 साहब ने हैदराबाद के लिए बहुत की. वो 1100 जो है, आप सोचिए, बॉम्बे में आपको, मुंबई अगर आप कहेंगे तो, there are more than 1,000 buildings listed. In Hyderabad, unfortunately, 150, and 150 भी टेनिस बॉल की तरह कभी लिस्ट में रहता है, कभी लिस्ट से गायब होता है, कभी रेगुलेशन 13 रहता है, रेगुलेशन गायब हो जाता है. आज ये हाल है. वी डोंट नो वेदर वी हैव एनी listed heritage in Hyderabad or not, because officially no one acknowledges that, although there is a court decision which says that 13 regulations stand. But लेकिन ये 2 साहब ऐसे हैं कि इन्होंने, आप तो साहब, आपसे हमारी ताल्लुकात उस ज़माने से हैं जब आप वरंगल में आपने कॉन्फ्रेंस की थी. द फाउंडेशन ऑफ वरंगल पे बहुत खूबसूरत आर्टिकल, उससे जो है इंटरेस्ट हम लोगों का बहुत बड़ा उसमें. ही वॉज इन देन आई थिंक ऑल्सो because of your post you were convener of INTAC वरंगल. आज जो आप वो देख रहे हैं, कई लोग उसकी क्रेडिट लेते हैं, मगर वो सब शुरू हुआ था आचार्य साहब के अंडर में, जो वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज स्टेटस रामप्पा को मिला है. हम हैदराबादी अपने पे जो एहसान करता है उसको भूलते नहीं हैं, उनकी हमेशा तारीफ़ करेंगे, हमेशा उसके बारे में कहेंगे, और साथ ही में जो हमें तकलीफ देता है उसे कभी छोड़ते नहीं. ये दोनों बातें हैं. तो ये शर्मा साहब आपका एहसान है. कर आप हैदराबादी हैं, मैं आपको क्या शुक्रिया अदा करूं. आप तो खुद अपना शहर है, अपने शहर के बारे में लिखा है, एंड यू हैव रिटन इट फ्रॉम योर हार्ट, एंड यू हैव painted a picture which I think, doesn't hide the flaws that we have. That is, I think, how it should be properly done. Otherwise, तो वो तारीफ के पुल बांधना हो तो कोई भी कर सकता है, मगर अपने आप को देख के पड़ी जब अपनी बुराइयों पर जो नज़र, तो फिर बुरा जहाँ में कोई बुरा ना रहा, वैसा तो हाल नहीं है हमारा, मुझसे तो बहुत बेहतर है. थैंक यू फॉर दिस बुक सर.
We'll take some questions from the audience. Request you to please raise your hand. The mic will come to you. Yeah. Request Mr. A.K. Goyal to...
Galaxy on the dais and equally illustrious galaxy among the audience. Good evening. I think Sharma ji, 100 years ago, I think your parents were in North India. Sir, Guruswamy ji, 150 years ago, your daddy, who was there, a civil servant, was in no different situation. Same with the man from Lucknow and the same with Acharya. भाई साहब का ज़्यादा तारुफ नहीं है, लेकिन उनकी भी बात वो भी. हुजूर, 400 साल पहले या तो आप तुर्कमान से आए थे, या ईरान से आए थे, या अफगानिस्तान से आए थे. सेम विद यू. 600 साल पहले आए थे साहब, इन 1323 से पहले दिस टेरिटरी वाज अंडर द कंट्रोल ऑफ काकेतियाज. मैं सिर्फ इतना कहना चाहता हूं कि when we are talking about Hyderabad, let's not forget Hyderabad is like a lovely child which is being cherished by Telangana government today. 10 years before it was cherished by Andhra Pradesh government. 50-60 years ago it was cherished by the Nizam. 250 years ago it was cherished by the Qutub Shahis. Not to talk of Mughals. And 450 years ago it was cherished by the Bahmanis. चारों जानिब से यहाँ कारवां आते गए, लोग सब बसते गए, शहर हैदराबाद बसता गया. मैं कुछ और बात कह रहा हूं. ये 1323 से पहले यहां पे कौन आया था? रुद्रांबा, the great queen from Orugallu, where he had been the collector, traveled from there to be there, defeated them, came over here, saw a beautiful place of a high hill, और वहां पर एक मट्टी का तुम्हारा किला बना दिया. उसको बोलते हैं गोलकुंडा. उसका गोला कुंडा नाम होता है साहब आज के दिन. मैं सिर्फ एक बात कहना चाहता हूं. Any one of us who has come from whichever part of the country or the world, पर्शिया से आए, तुरान से आए, अफगानिस्तान से आए, दिल्ली से आए, मारवाड़ी आए, अघोरनाथ चट्टोपाध्याय बंगाल से आए, मैं हरियाणा का कुरुक्षेत्र से आया हूं यहाँ पे, तमिलनाडु से आए, तुम्हारे कहाँ के लोग नहीं आए साहब यहाँ पे. Let each one of these person remember that they not only got a land which is called Hyderabad शहर today, they also got the people who accepted them, जो यहीं की मट्टी से बने हुए बाशिंदे थे. I call that society of Hyderabad, तेलंगाना समाजम. तेलंगाना समाजम इतना एक्सेप्टिंग है, वो आप बताए. बाहर के आए तुम्हारे, रे तू नॉन मुल्की है, रे तू मुल्की है, रे तू लोकल है, तू नॉन लोकल. देखिए ट्रेन में, whenever you get into a train at a new station, some people want to come in, the people in the train say get lost, get lost. ट्रेन के अंदर बैठ जाते, सिकंदराबाद में बैठते, लड़ रहे थे तुम्हारे, वारंगल पे तुम्हारे, वही उसके साथ में लड़ने को तैयार होता, बाहर रहने का तुम्हारा. इट्स ए ह्यूमन नेचर साहब. एनीथिंग न्यू वी डोंट एक्सेप्ट, लेकिन जब सिर पे आके पड़ जाती है, गले पड़ जाती है, तो उसको एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ता. दैट्स हाउ द सिटीज हैव बीन मेड. I would only say one thing. Each one of us has been grateful to the great city of Hyderabad. And when I think of Hyderabad, I think of not only the city, but the great people of Telangana society who have made us feel comfortable. Land and people of this city make what the city is. Thank you very much indeed.
सुनाई पढ़ने के लिए बोल रहा हूँ ना मैं, खास तौर पे आपको सुनाने के लिए बोल रहा हूँ. जी जी जी. एक हिस्ट्री लिखी गई रिसेंटली तेलंगाना के बारे में. उसमें आज भी हम, जो आपने कहा कि हमारे मेरे आबा जो आए हैं कहीं से, हमको तो अभी घुसपैठी ही बोलते ना सब. हमको तो अभी घुसपैठे ही बोलते हैं ना. आपकी जो हिस्ट्री है, जो आपके तहत लिखी गई है, उसमें साफ कहा गया है कि वी आर इन्वेडर्स. नहीं, आप इन्वेडर्स कहा आपने. आपकी किताब में है, आप पढ़िए अपनी किताब. है नहीं है साहब? कोई है? पढ़े हैं आप किताब? मुस्लिम्स आर कॉल्ड इन्वेडर्स आपके पास. ये हैदराबाद का रिवाज नहीं है. आपने हैदराबाद को समझा नहीं, इसलिए शायद आपने लिखा होगा. वो टर्म इन्वेडर्स जो है, जब तक इस्तेमाल किया जाएगा, वो बात रहेगी आपके दिल में, जो है कि यहाँ पहले थे, आ गए, ये घुसपैठिए हैं. तो हमने कभी हैदराबादी ने किसी को घुसपैठिया नहीं कहा. मैंने कहा अरे भैया, हमने नहीं कहा था, वो तो दिल्ली वाले खुद जो आए थे, मुगल जो आए थे, वो दिल्ली से बाद में आने वालों के लिए जो कह रहे थे, वो शेर मैंने पढ़ा था. शायद वो आपको समझ में नहीं आया. उसका तर्जुमा करके अंग्रेजी में कभी सुना दूंगा आपको.
Love fest. I would like to go back to my own experience when I shifted from Delhi, I bought a house in Gurgaon. Gurgaon was then labeled as the Millennium City, that this will be the city of the next century. So many of us invested in Gurgaon, and I also not only invested, I built a house and I moved there. And when I moved there, I realized that this was a city which has no depth, built on 3 feet deep foundation, and below that there was nothing. A city with no sewage, no water, and in the drains, monsoons, the sewage went round and round, and the summer it dried there. So when the monsoons came, there was no water to run off, so you got flooded. And we see a similar history being repeated in this city. Like there's no sewage. Where is the sewage going? Either it goes into the Musi or it stays wherever you are. So it floods. For the first time in my lifetime, I'm seeing Hyderabad flooding every year for the past 5 years. Some part of the city is flooding. So the city is growing pell-mell, has lost urban planning. A month ago when there was a heavy rain, they said it was the most rain in a century. I was invited for dinner by an important figure in this town, and I said, I'm not going to come to Banjara Hills or Jubilee Hills. Let's meet somewhere in between. So we decided to meet in Begumpet in a hotel for dinner. So dinner was fixed at 8. I got there a little late because of the rains, and I was plowed through from Secunderabad. I reached there at about 8:30. My host could not come till 10:30 because he was stuck in traffic. The Chief Minister was stuck in his office. He couldn't go anywhere for 2 hours. And the other person joining us also was stuck. He couldn't come. So they kept calling up the hotel and saying that, if Mr. Guruswamy is hungry, give him something to eat. So when they came I said, we'll wait. We sat down to have dinner. They said, sir, sorry about this. And I said, it reminds me of my first textbook on political economy. It starts with an event in the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil. It's a hot summer's day, and one traffic signal breaks down in downtown Sao Paulo, and cars start piling up. It's hot, it's about 120 out in the sun, and this is the scenario described by the author. And people are getting irritable. Then they start trying to jump the queue, trying to push through the red light. There's even more chaos. Then they start fighting. Somebody beats up somebody because somebody's car dented somebody. And it envelopes in this civic disturbance starts spreading. And he builds a scenario that it spreads into Sao Paulo. In the next 48 hours, it spreads to all cities in Brazil. And then it starts all over South America, everywhere else. So I was telling him that this scenario will happen around Hyderabad. You know, when I go to the south driving, I bypass Bangalore because it takes 2.5 hours to cross by Bangalore. So I turn right at Hindupur and go through to Tumkur. Because Bangalore is impossible now to traverse through. Hyderabad is going to become like that. Not because the water is bad or people are bad, there's no planning. It's pell-mell. There's one man I hold particularly responsible for the problems of the city is Dr. Channa Reddy and the town planner of that time. They were generous. The town planner, incidentally, every year his family puts up an ad in the Chronicle for his memory, but he gave permissions to anybody to build. Anywhere you want 5 stories, le lo. So the city was built crazily. That's what happened in Hyderabad. They were talking about Hyderabad is awful. It's a place where people should not go. There's no place to park. There's no place to stop and see anything. And people can't afford to buy properties there. It's not meant for people who work there anymore. So this is a lesson, object lesson for us in the city about what we need to set right before we become unredeemable. Like Gurgaon now floods every year. Every year it floods. You haven't seen the kind of floods you have in Gurgaon here as yet. But it will come. You know, where I live in Yapral, the next areas, floods up. Sainikpuri, that side, you know, every year there's heavy rain, it floods up. My house is on a higher ground, so it doesn't flood. But the roads around you are flooded. And it's going to happen all over the city because of bad government. And this is a lesson we need to learn because we have good bureaucracy, we have good climate, we have everything good going, but there is no government. I give you some statistics. The wage bill of the Republic of India, out of every 100 rupees we spend on salaries, 42 is spent by the central government. 44 is spent by the state governments. And only 12% is spent by the local governments. At the level at which people live, there is no government. When garbage piles up in your street, who do you talk to? Today, tell me in Hyderabad, who does one talk to? We used to have a system of ward officers in Hyderabad and Secunderabad. We have no ward officers. We have had a system of beat constables. We don't have beat constables anymore. Local government is just completely gone. And in cities like Delhi, the sweepers of the municipal corporation, they don't sweep anymore. They hire people in turn. And then there is the problem of ghost labor out of this. Every municipality, Hyderabad city has almost 20,000 ghost laborers in the municipality. So you got to set government right. You can't progress with bad government. So I think, we should drop this praise. City is fine, but we are also on the verge of an abyss. If you don't deal with it, don't stop the abyss now, we'll go over. So I'll leave you with that thought, and now you can sing praises to the city.
I think from the high of globalization to the low of localization, I think...
I would just interject for a minute. Those days in the early 90s, when we were trying to get international companies, IT companies here, the stretch from Begumpet Airport to up to KBR Park and Jubilee Hills and road number 36, that was the only stretch which was done up. You go slightly behind that, the soft underbelly of Hyderabad was visible. You go to the Maktas, BS Makta, behind the ITC Kakatiya, there's an area called BS Makta. I happened to visit all those areas. During, not that is MS Makta. This is BS Makta, Bhimsen Makta. BS Makta. It is a terrible slum just behind ITC Kakatiya. So it was a window dressing which was done to pad up the look of the city. It's like we cover, when foreign dignitaries come, we cover with something. So we need to be more real, need to do real planning and see that it doesn't just do window dressing. That is what is important.
Yeah, we'll take some questions.
1 minute. Sir, आपका जो window dressing है, that's also an old tradition in Hyderabad. I believe in the Nizams times when the Viceroy used to come, they used to have paintings on both sides of the road, hoardings with paintings. कुछ ना देखो सीधा चले जाओ फलकनुमा.
Srinivas Reddy. I just read in the news that the state is indebted to an extent of 7.5 lakh crores, out of which about 2.5 lakh crores was not even passed by the legislature. Now we are coming up with the Musi project. Somewhere I read could be tens of thousands of crores. I wonder if any financial planning has been done, the debt repayments of the state governments, and whether it will be feasible to go ahead with such a project. And I hope at least some of the officers will analyze this financial aspect and advise the government properly not to be spendthrift. And so I would like to have some comment.
Dr. Guruswamy being an economist to also supplement, but debt is a very standard practice of funding developmental schemes. And more than the government, the lending institutions are equally concerned whether there is a repayment capacity when you take that kind of a debt. So for every project, there is a very, very rigorous scrutiny of what kind of multiplier will it have. Will it add to, let us say, let's take this Musi project that you speak about. If it is done properly, if it is executed properly, if water actually comes, it becomes perennial, boulevards are developed and recreational locations are taken up with a strong element of getting back returns through commercial opportunities, etc. If it adds to your resources at that point in time, obviously part of it will be plowed back to repay the debt. So much more than the governments, the potential donor agencies actually do that kind of a study. And if they feel that this project will just not be able to create any assets for the government, which potentially can be monetized and a stream of revenue can be generated, they just won't agree to it.
Countries grow on debt. The United States national debt is 272% of its GDP. India's debt is 90% of GDP. It's considered under-leveraged, and we can borrow more. There's nothing wrong in debt. We are all stuck with our middle-class intellectual baggage. For instance, I would never borrow money from a bank or from anybody. I've never owed anybody any money, saying no loans. My credit, I'm told, is very good, but I will not borrow because that's in my mind. But as an economist, I say it's good to borrow. As long as I'm only interested in whether he can service my debt. Because we are sitting on a surplus of cash in our society. In our economy, it's got a lot of cash. Cash sits in bank. And when cash is sitting in a bank doing nothing, it's very bad for the economy. Cash has to go to work. Cash going to work means people have to borrow and build. So the cycle is called a virtuous cycle. As long as loans are being serviced, interest is being paid, debts go back, it's fine. Now, if you tell me that Telangana is not servicing its debt, then I would be worried. But Telangana is servicing its debt. There's no default. A poor country like India has never defaulted on a single loan. You manage, you cut your coat according to the cloth you have. So don't say that, this business of, when Revant Reddy was in opposition, he would say ki KCR has borrowed money left and right and is sunk us in debt now. Now KTR is shouting Revant Reddy is plunging us into debt. As long as they are plunging us into debt and allowing that money to do something in the city and create assets, create structures, is fine. Even if they take a little money and go, is also fine. Because KTR is saying he's taking the money out to Delhi. That is the problem. But if he keeps the money in Saifabad, is okay. But the point is, that is being facetious, but the point is that debt by itself is not bad. As long as projects are taking place and public wealth is created, money will always be stolen. And that will always be a small part of the total outlay. Incidentally, this Rajiv Gandhi statement, which is 87% is completely misunderstood. What Rajiv Gandhi was saying, and I've asked him personally, I said, did you say that 87% is stolen? He said, no. He said, what I said is, the dhancha of government, salaries, infrastructure, the debt, everything, that in a rupee, 87 paisa goes off before it. Now, what is the capital expenditure to the budget ratio of the government of India today? 7%. That is, out of every 100 rupees, only 7 rupees goes to build something. 44 rupees goes on paying interest. It's not paid, but it is, in the book it is allocated. Defense takes up something. Government employees, they don't come cheap anymore. So it takes 14% of GDP. So that's what he meant when he said that 87 rupees goes off before 12 rupees goes to the common man. It's even less. Today in Government of India, it's only 7 rupees. So don't worry about debt. I was once talking to the chairman of Citibank, who came to address us when I was a student. I said, sir, you have borrowed money and lent money to Congo. So he said, doesn't matter. Countries don't go under, they roll over. That is, you roll over the debt. Country is still there. The debt is still there. We just rewrite the books again. So we're all rolling over our debts. Debts will always be there. Debt is a good thing. Letter of comfort is a good thing. Keep it under your pillow and go to sleep.
वो डेट के भी कई किस्म होते हैं साहब हमारे उर्दू शायरों के डेट्स को भी अगर आप देखें तो मजा आएगा गालिब साहब बोले उधार की पीते हैं और कहते हैं कि हाँ रंग लाएगी अपनी फाका मस्ती एक दिन वो तो खर्च लेके पी गया साहब उसका क्या होगा कोई इकोनॉमिक्स में कोई ऐसा सोल्यूशन है
what we have seen in Hyderabad, the growth like the ORR, the JICA projects which have helped us largely, it is there for us to see. It was a soft loan which JICA gave. Now again they're talking to, most probably Musi project will be under the JICA. They're talking to JICA, World Bank or JICA, one of these agencies which will help us. Only, I think all of us need to draw attention to the only JICA loan which did not yield the results as it should be is the Hussain Sagar project. We should hang our head in shame. As I said, Hussain Sagar in a way was a trigger for Hyderabad. Yes, 1562, it was set up by Shah Hussain Wali, who was supposed to be the architect and the son-in-law of the Ibrahim Kuli. Khairatun Nisa's muse, son-in-law. So Hyderabad city was set up thinking it's a large water body. But from 1562 up to 1945, a lake which supplied drinking water to the city. I was in water board, I was told that's the story. The 4 channels which come there, they continue to pollute it, particularly the Kukatpalli Nala. The Balkampet Nala, Kukatpalli Nala, Banjara Nala and Picket Nala. These 4 nalas join. The JICA project which was sanctioned 20 years ago, I was also there for some time, 9 months or so in HMDA, tried to do some bioremediation, but there is no continuity. We keep talking the same thing. It is a stinking lake. We should all be ashamed of the lake, stinking lake, which is right in the middle of the, right in the heart of the city. All of us need to resolve to do something to save it. It is the heart of the city in a way. The shape is like a heart.
Yes, sir. आप सही बोले. But हैं हम सब हैदराबादी. आप कुछ दिन उस तरफ आ गए, पहले आ गए और मैं बाद में आया और but हम लोग यहाँ आए और यहीं के हो गए. Just to give an example, you talked about labs, missile labs. In the first few years when this place I joined, a lot of small components we were able to make only in Hyderabad, others were not able. Over the years, say like about 30 साल के बाद, every component now can be made in Hyderabad. That shows we have developed excellent vendors, industries, factories. This is number one. And his book, Beyond B. Of late, whenever I go out of this place, Hyderabad, or even India, out of India, earlier they used to say only about B, Biryani, or if I say India, oh, Taj Mahal. Now they know Hyderabad. And of late, many people ask me, Biryani. Then they ask me about, equally important, which I would say, 2 words. Pulla Reddy and Karachi Bakery. And Pulla Reddy I have been seeing right from many years in at home of this place, Raj Bhavan. Every year they give their Pulla Reddy sweets. And that's mentioned there by his, what's the wording there? By appointment with his government. So, है some यहीं के हैं. Yeah, correct. Since years. तो यहीं के रहेंगे हम लोग और यहीं के बन गए, यहीं के हो गए. So let's not feel about anything that आप वहाँ से आए, मैं यहाँ से आया. हम यहाँ आ गए, यहीं रहेंगे. यही सवाल था कि we are really developed a lot and equal importance he's not given in his book to Beyond B. Pulla Reddy, Karachi Bakery, वगैरह वगैरह, IT, BT, everything also you have to add in your next book. Forthcoming book, maybe this can be added. Thank you.
Given a good amount of words to how the NGRI and the RRL and all these laboratories came into being actually in Hyderabad. So, yeah, yes, I'm really thankful to him, and I have been in touch with him for last 3 or 4 years or so. Book is really fantastic. Only one chapter I could read while sitting here and while listening to all these. I think we knew about so many stories, whatever they are presented in the book, but there was no kind of a proper documentation of that. And that was the kind of thing which he has done it, so he need a lot of kudos for that. The other thing our sir was mentioning that cash, a lot of cash is stacked in the banks and all. So cash is like water actually. And that analogy also has come now, that water till it flows, it remains clean. But when it is deposited at one place, at one point of time it will start stinking. The same thing is with the cash also. It will not remain useful if it is stacked at one place actually. Now, Jayesh sir mentioned, yes sir? Yeah, Jayesh sir mentioned about the water, most important thing, which is crucial for this Musi project actually. So that water you have found solution from bringing from the Godavari actually. But what about the water which we need for our daily use at every place? For everything is revolving around water, our life. So other parts of the city, at one point of time, the water comes and it goes. Okay. And we have, of course, created obstacles. That's why we are flooding also. But what is there any proper plan or this system in work so that we meet water demands of our people, maybe 1.5 billion after 20 or 30 years of Hyderabad? Are there any systematic plans for that actually?
No, so I'm sure it is known to everyone. In the last 10 years, a very monumental project has been implemented, which is called Mission Bhagiratha. So I'm sure you know this, that there are two major rivers. One is passing through the south of Telangana, one is passing through the north of Telangana. And most of the water goes wasted. I mean, it goes to Andhra Pradesh, eventually to the ocean, to the sea. And a grid has been created, a water grid, through which by lifting the water from both these two rivers is brought through a chain of reservoirs, pumping stations, etc. So we are now water surplus. In fact, to every home, water is provided, pipe drinking water. This has been the inspiration for a national program called Har Ghar Jal. And 10% of that is earmarked for industries, which also gives us lots of comfort because we are currently using just about 4.3% of that 10%. So at least for the next 100 years, more and more industries can be accommodated. But if your question is only about Hyderabad, what exactly is going to be the water scenario for Hyderabad? So I directly don't look after the subject, so I don't have precise numbers, etc. But I know for sure that there are schemes to draw enough water that Hyderabad requires from the Godavari and to provide proper reservoirs and storage. So, yes. So, you tell the numbers.
Actually, I was MD of the HMWSSB long ago, 2004-5. The best source of drinking water in Hyderabad continue to be Gandipet and Himayat Sagar. They are not for nothing we say that Gandipet ka pani jo piya wo hamesha rehta hai. Because that is the cheapest source of water which comes down by gravity. Water there from per kiloliter costs only 21 paisa. Whereas water from Krishna project, that gives this Usman Sagar and Himayat Sagar provide 45 mgd of water, million gallons per day. 45 mgd, 20 plus 25. Whereas Krishna project, which gives 180 mgd, 90, part of it was completed when I was MD. There the water cost, it is a three-stage pumping from 160 kilometers from Nagarjun Sagar. That costs about 45 rupees per kiloliter. Usse thoda behtar hai, Singur water was there, Manjira ka, aap sune honge. That was also better. That was about 21 rupees per kiloliter. Kahan 21 paisa, 21 rupees, 45 rupees. ये गोदावरी वाटर जो आ रहा है, उसका कॉस्ट ये 6-stage pumping है. So water board will become bankrupt. You will have enough source of water. But the good thing which is that unlike other cities, Hyderabad has planned for water supply. There is no problem of water supply. But the source have to be seen carefully. Sustainable source has to be looked at. You can get water, but at what cost? You can give this bottle for 10 rupees, but you can give this for 1,000 rupees. The contractor doesn't mind giving you 1,000 rupees. I hope our rulers don't go for 1,000 rupees, but look for options at 10 rupees. That is the problem with Telangana. In the of late, most of the projects have become contractor-driven projects, not people-driven projects.
Jayesh, I have one couple of questions for you. This fourth city that is coming up, Uchala, is there any specific plan to encourage electronics manufacture at the component level? Semiconductor and component level, that is number one. Number two is, it is from the sublime to the ridiculous. A simple, I think, solution for relieving some of the traffic congestion which Mohan just talked about would be to synchronize the traffic signals. This is not something new. It is done everywhere. Today, it is also possible to use AI to sort of make it more efficient. Somehow, in my 40 years in Hyderabad, I have never seen, synchronized signals. If you come from Secunderabad Club towards RP Road, there are half a dozen signals and none of them are synchronized. Everything is red. So, there are some simple solutions which could possibly help in easing the congestion on the traffic. But my main question to you is about electronics manufacture, since you are coming up with a new city altogether. It is something in which we are lagging behind, and since I am in the electronics sector, we are fond of telling ourselves that we have missed the bus as far as China, competing with China is concerned. But the fact remains that apart from services, electronic hardware, without that, there is no going forward. And we are still, the biggest, almost after oil, the other, single source of foreign exchange outflow to China especially is electronics import. So is there any specific plan on electronics, especially at the component level?
So Pankaji, it is very much there. In fact, there are 4 manufacturing activities which will be taken up in the future city. One is on life sciences, what is called green pharma. That is mostly formulations, biotech, R&D, and some ancillary activities. One is on electric mobility, electric vehicles, including storage. The third one is actually electronics. And we know that components play a very important role. In fact, in a matter of maybe 2-3 weeks, we'll be bringing out an updated version of our electronics and semiconductor policy, where we will be explaining how we are going to support component manufacturing, and most of that will come in that area only, in that 4th city area. And regarding the question of traffic management through synchronizing street lights, in fact, it has been tried out. In fact, I don't know how people are not fully aware about it, but almost I would imagine, we are in 2024. I think it started in early 2000s. It is called ITMS, Intelligent Traffic Management System. In fact, our traffic police and police department took that initiative precisely to do, yes sir, some intelligent traffic management system. So that project has been going on. So, but I'm not very sure, because the fact is that on the streets you do see vehicles piling up and gridlocks and all that. So I'll take stock of it. I'm not fully aware, but a initiative.
There is scope for further.
Yeah, absolutely.
A small example I'll give you about small tweaking, how it can help in traffic. At 9 o'clock in the morning, you go towards high-tech city, Secunderabad through high-tech city. The road is clogged, inward traffic, outward traffic. But one side will be free. So when CP Anand was the DCP, the Joint Commissioner Traffic, I suggested that why not free one of the lanes of which is vacant. As of now, only 2 lanes are being used from 9 to 11, 9 to 10 in the morning. Similar thing at night from, let's say, 7 to 10. So they started experimenting by opening up one lane, which was otherwise vacant. That, to some extent, some small tweaking can also help. It need not be so intelligent, so advanced. Police need to have, it is possible that some small tweaking here and there helps. Bombay traffic is much better managed.
Okay, my name is Uday Prakash, ex-scientist. I want to know whether, like indoor, we have any plans for efficient waste management. Indoor, they have implemented a system by which they make money out of waste. Okay, so does Hyderabad have any such thing? They take a lot of pride in their waste management.
See, there is a phenomena which is very well understood by students. It is called asking out of syllabus questions. So all the questions that you are asking, I only have tangential information. See, in the government, work is extremely compartmentalized. So I know broadly that there is a system, there is a, Ramki runs that project, but unfortunately I don't have any deep familiarity in depth.
I think we had a wonderful session. I thank each panelist individually for the nice presentation, insight, answering all the questions. I request a big clap for all of them. And also for Dinesh for coming all the way from Delhi and lifting up our spirits for a wonderful evening. I hope some will go for biryani and whatever their favorite food. I wish you all a wonderful evening, Dasara, weekend, and also a big clap for all of you for coming here on a holiday. in making this a memorable event. Thank you very much.